Right. All right. So yeah. So if you can, so yeah. So show your face in the camera. Give us a wave. I see. Okay. I see Ivy. I see myself. Who else do I see? I see. I feel like Romper Room. I feel like Romper. I see Tova. I see Travis. Good day. DeCourier, let me see your face. Mr. Richardson, let me just give me a wave. See there? Okay, good morning, good morning. Catherine, let me see your face in the place. Mr. Richardson, let me see your face in the place. Just give us a wave here. Woo-hoo. All right. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. Okay. All right. So again, welcome everybody. Again, our housekeeping items. Thank you for turning on your cameras. That's going to be part of the attendance, especially when you speak. We want to see. We need interaction, interactivity. And again, I know I have right now. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. I got Travis, DeCourier, Patty, Catherine, and Chantel. I have your emails in the chat. Thank you for that. Again, having your email in the chat is part of the attendance process that we have. So again, we take attendance by the emails, and we actually send out the emails for the assessment. So, and then that's how we know that you've attended. So thank you guys for getting those emails back, getting those assessments back in a timely manner for the folks that are on the call. So we're going to take a quick review from last meeting, our last meeting. We're going to take a quick review from last meeting. Can anybody remember we talked about what was one of our takeaways from our last training?
10 times miles on hotels.
Anyone?
1,300 airport.
Can anyone? Okay. What about anybody had an opportunity for up, down, up last week? Do you remember what up, down, up is? Let me see. I'm going to take it out to Miss LaBrenda. Do you have any opportunities to use what we learned? Anything that we learned from last week?
Yes. Yesterday, last week, Logan, we used the up down method with Logan when it came to cleaning the basement on Greencastle. So his duty was to empty the whole clean the basement floor, clear it, and throw things in the trash. He did an excellent job at that, doing that also, and he was rewarded at the end of that.
So talk to me. Okay, so what is up, down, up? What is up, down, up? Can anybody help her with that? What is up, down, up?
From what I can remember, if I'm correct, it's basically giving a good compliment to the resident or child, then kind of putting in not necessarily a bad comment, but just something that they could personally work on, and then following it up with another good thing. So then it's not 100% they focus on the bad.
And yes, that's a good definition. I'm going to take away the word bad though, because it's not something bad. It's just more corrective, or it's more corrective in nature, right?
Constructive criticism.
Right.
Constructive criticism. So using the example that LaBrenda gave, and I know you guys have some more, but using the example that LaBrenda gave, the constructive criticism was, it was his time to do the chores. He was supposed to do the basement and the laundry room, and the laundry room was a complete mess, right? So the corrective criticism was what, guys? What was the corrective criticism in that issue, in that situation? What was the down?
It was a mess.
And and as a result of that mess, what did we want to have happen?
It cleaned up.
That we all right, we got that. So that was a down. It's a mess, and we need to get it cleaned up.
But
But if
how
you
was the
can't-
mess verbalized? How was it verbalized to him? How was it like, was it, hey, Kristen, this is a mess?
we use up, down, up.
Up, down, up. Mhm.
So how
Hey,
was that
Logan.
verbalized? I want to hear it. Like, would it,
Okay.
would
It
would
was more of us going down in the basement and visually allowing me and him to view that it was a mess. I don't believe that it was said in a way it was a mess. We was just, like, is this your chore to do? How about you get all of the clothes and things out the and then helped instruct him on putting them in bags and where to put it at when we were done with it. It really didn't. I don't think we used the word a mess.
Mhm. But it was pretty much a visualization that you
A
were showing
visual.
them. You
Yes.
showed them, say, hey, take a look at what this, basement looks like in its current state right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then the back side up was, Logan, you're really good at completing the task. And this is not like you. So I already know that you're gonna get this and it's gonna look great after it's done, that kind of thing. And he accepted it well. I happened to be there to be able to witness that. So LaBrenda did a great job with that.
I literally did this yesterday to my son because we had therapeutic camp was canceled yesterday. So I was at home with my kids. And it was a challenge because my 3 boys had to clean their room and they were fighting over who gonna do this. And it was just horrible how they were in there trying to clean that room. And so the youngest, who's 9 years old, was very upset that he felt like he was doing all the work. And so I had to kind of make him kind of redirect him kind of because he was having this whole meltdown. And it was funny because my 12-year-old saw what I did and was like, wow, Ma, that's good. So what happened was I said to him, he had a whole meltdown, crying and screaming. I said, well, you know what? His name is Jalen. I said, Jalen, I really like how you clean. You clean very well. You remember that time how you cleaned your room the other time the boys didn't help, but you went in there and you did your job. I said, so I like how you do that. You go ahead and go in there and do what you do best. And you know what he did? He literally skipped in the room. It was kind of fun. He was like, okay, mommy, I got it.
Absolutely.
Skipped in the room, versus me feeding it. And my other 12-year-old was like, my 12-year-old, he was sitting next to me and he's like, oh, I like what you did there, Ma. I see that.
Yeah, I'm hyping my
What I did, my son said, oh, I like what you did there, Ma. Because he had this total meltdown. He was like, this and that. And then I said, oh man, but you cleaned the room really well. I saw that last time how you did that. You did such a good job. I said, won't you go and do your side like that? Go ahead and don't worry about them. You go and do your side and what you do best. And he literally skipped up out of the room happy.
Now, for the up, down, up, since Miss LaBrenda was the first one to give an example of her using the up, down, up, which is, again, the up, down, up is for the purpose of constructive criticism where people can receive it, right? So the up is, hey, you're great at doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C. The down is the constructive criticism. Clean this up, or this needs to be changed, or this is what I need you to do that you didn't do. But again, you're great. This is good. You're good at what you do. So that's the up, down, up, right? LaBrenda, you're going to go ahead and get a $25 cash app today for doing that. Thank you for that. If there's anyone else that wants to talk about the up, down, up. Now, hold on. LaBrenda went first. She stepped out and she participated. So she's going to get $25 today. For the next person that participates with an example of the up, down, up, it doesn't have to be with the kids. It can also be in your personal life. And somebody can give me a personal life example of doing the up, down, up in their personal life, $20 cash app.
Are you able to hear me?
Barely.
One moment.
You got to talk up or turn your volume up.
Yeah, is that better?
Much better.
Yeah, so example for me, My little brother been dealing with some stuff back home in Chicago, and I'm all the way out here, so I just been trying to mentor him. And he was ditching school and stuff throughout the year, so he came to stay with me for a few months. So now that he's back home, I just call in and check on him and let him know, like, hey, I understand you missed all that school during the year, but it's your chance to make it up and do better. Just keeping him focused, letting him know, like, we understand that that time you took away from school may have held you back, but it's nothing to sweat over. You should use that to reflect on. So that was more so the down part, like making him aware that he did miss a lot of school and that he needs to not continue that behavior. And the upside is just letting him know that I do notice him doing a better job, and I see the consistency, and I am proud of him for essentially cleaning his act up when we thought he was doing. So I think that would be a great.
So put it in you gotta give me put it in the up format, right?
The up is
no. You actually have to reenact the conversation. I don't need you to tell me. I want you to reenact the conversation. So let's role play it a little bit. I'm your brother.
Hey Joels. I noticed that.
Hey, what's going on?
I noticed that you've been going to school more consistently. I talked to Mom. We had a couple conversations.
All right.
You are aware that you missed all of the school previously before the summer.
Yeah.
So this is why you in summer school. But I am proud of you that you are going to school consistently. And I see that you brought all your grades up and you won't have to be held back and repeat your freshman year. I'm very proud of you.
Textbook.
That was so nice.
Textbook.
That was literally how the conversation.
Textbook. Anybody else? Up, down, up. Because and we're harping on this, we're lingering on this on purpose, guys, because again, like I said last week, these skills, these tools, these strategies, not only do they work with our kids, they work in your personal life. How many times have you you had a situation that, a bone to pick with someone that you care about, right? But if every time you try to tell them, as soon as you say something on the downside, then they're just completely tuned out. They've turned away, they got offended or whatnot. This is a way, using this method is a way that people can receive constructive criticism. We're not talking about we're not talking about bashing people over the head verbally. We're saying legitimate constructive criticism. If you use this method, it can improve the people that you love and care about, the people that you work with. It will improve them receiving the information. Anybody else? Example of up, down, up, either with the kid or with in your personal life. Go ahead, Ivy.
I personally, it was with Peyton just this past week, and I don't even think I was really trying to do it. I just kind of just did it. But there was a moment he was, kind of woke up and was upset and kind of having a moment or whatever. And we had a walk, we talked about it, and kind of on that walk, we were walking. I was saying to him, "Hey, man, like, see how like this is good. Like this is real good right now. Like we're getting along. Everybody's doing really good. Me and you are getting to go on a walk. You're getting to get out of the house." I was like, but when you start to get upset with everybody, it makes it to where we can't really do these things for you. And when you start to kind of come after people like that, we can't really do this for you as much because there's got to be consequences. But I'm really proud of you for taking a minute and coming to me and saying that you wanted to go on a walk and you wanted a minute. And that's really just how the conversation had went.
So now, like I see in the chat, Ms. Tova, you're exactly right. So we're going to call it constructive communication, right? Instead of constructive criticism, right? Constructive communication. What was the constructive communication, Ivy, that you wanted from Peyton? You have to unmute.
I thought I already was. That I wanted from him?
Yeah, what was the constructive communication?
really like just what I wanted out of that conversation from him. Really,
Yes, correct.
okay, just for him to understand that but more things that he's gonna want to do throughout the day, like say he wants to go on a walk again, like for the second time, or say he just wants to color or go outside or just anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like just so he can understand that there's steps that he's gonna have to take to work towards those
Right.
goals outside of just continuing the behavior he was having.
Absolutely. Good job. All right, we got time for one more. Anyone else? We're talking about up, down, up, and how you've used that in your personal life or professional life. And we got $20 on the table, Cash App today. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on from that. Again, I don't know when we started on the recording, and I know some of you guys have done this already, but if you could one more time, everyone that's on the call, if you could one more time, if you can put your emails in the chat, even though you've done it already, I wanted to make sure that we got everything in before the record, that there may be some of you that put your emails in before the recording, so it may not save after the meeting. So if you could take 1 minute and let's put your emails back in the chat. Again, that's a part of our attendance. That's how we know that you're here, and that's how we can send out the assessments and get those out, and you get those back. That's how you actually get paid. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. So our next point, I'm gonna turn this over to Miss Ivy. And Ivy, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to allow you to share. I'm going to make you the host. So we can get that here while everybody's putting their name in this, putting their emails in the chat. So where's Miss Ivy? Ivy, where is she? Ivy, there you go. Ivy Gardner. And she is now. All right, Miss Gardner, it is on you. You are now the host.
All right, I'm the host. All right, let me share my screen with you all. Okay, so we are going to talk today about trauma-informed care. By show of hands, raise your hand with the emotions icons, how many people have heard of trauma-informed care? Okay, let's see how many people. Oh, we got a couple of people.
We got Ivy. She has her hand raised. Catherine, we got a little emoji from Catherine.
I don't know how to raise my hand on here, but I have my certification in youth trauma 101.
Oh, who says that? Who said that?
That's Mr. Decourier Richardson.
All right, Miss Richardson, good. So this is just going to be kind of for you, like a review, right? Okay, good.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We're working with you. So, when you think about trauma-informed care, what comes to mind? Anyone? What comes to mind when you're thinking about trauma-informed care?
Trauma.
Trauma, okay.
Yeah, when I think of trauma-informed care, is like having in the forefront of your mind, like, okay, I'm caring for these people. I know that they've been exposed to some trauma, so it's certain things that I have to, either ignore or communicate to them extra, or just keep extra mindful that they've endured trauma. So
Yeah, good job.
And of our own trauma too.
Yes, yeah. Remember we talked about
Right.
professional
And
awareness.
also being aware of their trauma that they have prior to you coming into their life.
Yes.
I think when I hear trauma force care, knowing that every situation we deal with a child will be potentially volatile. Just because it was fine this time, they cleaned up their room, they mopped, they did everything they did everything right, but that one potential trigger may have set them to another level. So you always have to be aware that there's a potential crisis going on at any given time. Even though it seemed fine then, but it could turn hostile any given moment.
He said hostile. Yes.
Okay.
Look, I like the
Hostile.
trigger. I like the trigger. And then you said knowing their triggers too. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, you got to know they're going to happen.
Right, right. Okay, good, good. So pretty much being aware that there is trauma with the individual. Years ago, the reason for trauma-informed care and training on trauma-informed care is because years ago, the treatment wasn't focused on trauma. The treatment was focused, you know, pretty much on these are the behaviors that are going on, but we're not understanding that behind the behaviors was trauma. So when you do trauma-informed care now, you are understanding that these individuals have been through some trauma, and there's certain techniques that you have to utilize or just even know how to engage with the individual, so you can have that in your forefront that this individual is experiencing trauma. Okay. So it says, let's understand trauma. All right. We always like to give good definitions of childhood trauma. It says it's an emotional, physical behavior, or cognitive response to a deeply distressing or disturbing experience that overwhelms the child and creates feelings of terror, hopelessness, and helplessness. Here are examples of traumatic experience. We just talked about physical and emotional and sexual abuse. Those are like the top ones. Death or loss of a loved one, witnessing domestic violence, persistent bullying and humiliation, abandonment, neglect, and even experiencing community violence. How many people know that witnessing domestic violence can create someone to experience trauma, or that's an actual traumatic event? How many people already knew that? They're actually been experiencing that.
I can understand that. I understand that. Yes.
Okay. And who was that? Miss Tova?
Miss LaBrenda.
Brenda. Okay. I see she's put her thumbs up here. Okay. It's a little hard to see the way when I'm presenting. I don't show everybody at once. Okay. So yeah, so them actually witnessing domestic violence, not necessarily being the person in the domestic violence, but just watching the domestic violence go on, is, you know, could be a traumatic, you know, experience for someone. What about life-threatening natural disasters? Medical trauma, you know, a child or family illness or an accident, severe pain, invasive for frightening procedures. Or what about this? Caretaker untreated mental illness. Oh, let's talk about that. What do you all know about that? If the child's caretaker is mentally ill and is not being treated, what type of trauma do you think that child could experience with that? Anyone?
Emotional abuse, physical abuse, neglect, just being
I would also
mistreated
say
in general.
psychological abuse for sure.
Yeah. Because what if the caretaker was like really sweet and kind to the kid, but they still was mentally ill? Do you think there could be some traumatic effect?
Yeah, the child won't be able to identify proper social cues, especially if 1 minute the caregiver is nice and then the next minute the caregiver is not even mean, just distant or withdrawn or depressed. The child won't be able to identify relationships in a positive manner, I would think, especially when it's coming to like friends, sports, any activity dealing with people, because the social cues will be off for that child.
Sounds like you've had some experience in the work field with that. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
From your response?
Yes, ma'am.
Give us an example.
I just one time at a previous home I was at, it was a kid, he liked playing basketball a lot, but that was all he really wanted to do. And learning from him, it was because that was the only pleasant time he had with his father. So anytime that they wasn't practicing basketball or working on basketball, he really wasn't around his dad. His dad was not necessarily a bad guy, but he wasn't present. They had like a coach-player relationship. So that caused him to be more withdrawn from the other children or even staff unless we was doing something sports related.
Wow. So having that information as a staff, how did you all engage that child into treatment?
Introduce him to new things like board games, and me personally, I know that he got the warrior spirit since he likes to compete. So just give him different avenues to show his competitive nature, whether that be like Monopoly, chess, any other sport that's not physical that can engage you mentally and also build camaraderie, because you could play basketball in a way by yourself by practicing on your game. You can't play chess by yourself. You can't play Monopoly or Uno by yourself. And believe it or not, those are actually team building and strategy games.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I said, sound like you were teaching him some team building skills, right? Teaching him that he's not an island, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Through those different type of activities. Good. So you were able, I hear that there's a correlation that the kid had with, where he found was positive in his life, which was associated with basketball. So he wanted to consistently play basketball because that was something that was positive in his life. And I guess he experienced some form of trauma. And in order for him to probably try to block out a lot of that trauma, he used a coping skill of what? Basketball.
Yes.
Let's think about it like this. This is one of the kids, say this particular kid is a kid at the group home. And he, we understand that he loves basketball, right? But there's a staff member who feels like, oh, this kid is playing basketball too much. Life is not just about basketball. And he immediately pulls basketball away from the kid, or she immediately pulls this happy activity that this kid enjoys doing. What do you think is going to happen without putting any type of what do you call it? Like you were saying, AR, that you did something different, teaching them team building skills. Replacement, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Without putting any type of replacement, just snatched it out.
Like Travis said, that'll probably be a trigger for the child. And then it just goes up from there. Or it might not even go up and the child might internalize it because that's the way he's used to or she's used to dealing with trauma, by going into a deeper shell, becoming more introverted and reserved. So it's definitely different forms of triggers and different ways they might react with that trigger. But it would definitely set them off either way it goes.
You're going to trigger them regardless, right? And we pretty much re-traumatize that child, right or wrong. How many people understand it? Yeah, pulling that from that child pretty much re-traumatize that child. And, we have to be very careful when we're working in these spaces that we do not do that. The key word or the key phrase when working with individuals, to do no harm, right? To do no harm, because we know that harm was done before they even came to you. So the key phrase is to do no harm. I will tell you all a short story. When I was working in residential, I still remember this to this day. It pierced my heart when it happened. At this particular agency I was working at the time, I was working second shift, and I really wanted to work first shift, for sure. First shift wasn't available, and so I worked second shift for about a year, and then a first shift position came about. And I rushed to go for it. I put in for the first shift and I got it. But it was really interesting because I was wondering, can someone please put their mic on? I feel like I'm hearing someone's background.
Yeah, that's you're gonna have to mute her, Anna.
Oh, I have to mute her. Oh, okay. I forgot that I'm doing the thing. Sorry. And so I remember I rushed to get that first shift position, but then I also noticed to myself, I was like, well, a lot of people want the first shift, and I know I don't have seniority. Why did I get the first shift? I was really like wondering, like, now I realized that people were verbalizing that they wanted first shift, but they didn't actually go after it. And I thought that was really strange. I found out why. On first shift, there was two ladies that been there for years. One 20 years, the other one for about 10. And they had that shift locked down. And no one wanted to work with them because they were not nice. Let's just say it. They were not nice. They were rude, they were disrespectful. They had the kids to the point where the kids were so intimidated by them. And so that's why nobody wanted to work that first shift position. But I got in there and I was young. I was early 20, very fearless. And I went into the position, open eyes, with my open eyes, knowing that this is how these women are. But I was like, no, I'm going to make a change. So I get in there in the morning time and the kids are not even allowed to talk. They're looking down or eating breakfast, like if this military school. So I get in there and say, hey, good morning. How everybody doing? And you should see their eyes looked up like, wow, she's talking to us. But you could also see that the staff was looking like, how dare she come in here and mess up our shift? So I remember we were getting ready to line the kids up one day. And it was this one young man who had experienced a lot of abuse and trauma. A lot. That he had a lot of issues with connecting with people. Definitely probably had some RAD going on, reattachment disorder. And I never forget, he got connected with a tutor that was there who became very fond of him and he became very fond of her, that they had this wonderful connection that I was like, wow, this is great because he doesn't really have connections with people, to the point where she's about to adopt him, right? 12-year-old kid about to get adopted. Never forget this day. It's a morning routine. I come in the morning and say, hey, good morning. Kids are eating. They get lined up to go downstairs. And the kid who I just talked to you about had this picture. And he said, Miss Ivy, look at my picture. I drew this for Miss such and such, which is the tutor that is going to adopt him, in the process of adopting him. And he was so happy that he drew this picture. He was so happy that he was going to send this picture off to who's going to be his new mother. Okay. Do you know what one of the staff did? She said, get back in line and shut your mouth. She took his picture and she ripped it and she threw it in the trash.
Oh no.
Wow. No, wow.
That's
That's
awful.
crazy.
It had to be awful, right? For me to even remember that to this day.
That was traumatizing.
That kind of traumatized us, didn't it? Because there isn't such thing as secondhand trauma. If you all have a pencil or pen and piece of paper, write this down: secondhand trauma. Secondhand trauma is trauma that people experience when people tell their story of trauma. And being a caretaker that you all are and working with individuals that have trauma, you do experience secondhand trauma. And that's why it's very important. I didn't mean to go off on that drip, but that's why it's very important to make sure you do a lot of self-care, because you are experiencing secondhand trauma when you work with these individuals, by learning of their story and watching them go through things that was traumatic or hearing things that was traumatic. But yes, what she did was very traumatizing. She ripped his picture. What do you think that did to him? Number one, before anyone answered, this is a kid who does not rarely connect with anyone. He wasn't a behavior problem. He was very much, he does what he needs to do. He's not disrespectful. He just did not build emotional bonds with people easily. And that's due to his, traumatic experience. But he finally built an emotional connection, which is healthy, to someone that's about to adopt him and he is displaying these behaviors that are healthy behaviors, then the staff member takes a picture that he draws and rips it and tells him to shut up and get in line.
It probably pushed them back into a shell a little further. Like, see, that's
Yeah.
why I never did in the first place.
Yeah.
Like,
Good. Yes. Somebody else got their hand up, Ivy.
That's basically what I was gonna say, is like it makes you feel like all the hard work that you did to get there is just kind of ripped from you in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Okay. Right. So trauma-informed care is basically what that says, informed. You're informed. You're being informed about the client. You're understanding. You may not, at the level of work that you all are doing, you may not know the totality of what the patient or resident has been through with trauma. You may get bits and pieces because a lot of times, a lot of information is given to the clinicians. And then the information that you all get is pretty much on a need to know basis, right? So you may not get the whole totality of what's going on with the particular patient or the resident, but you do understand that that resident has experienced some trauma. So that informed care is understanding you're being informed about there is trauma. Now, what do we do when we treat it? Because you are doing some form of treatment when you are working with these individuals. So I want you to take a look at the brain and how trauma causes the brain to function from the survival center, okay? So there's 3 parts with the brain. You have the higher brain, which we call the executive center. This is the developmental spurt, which is where the kid probably approximately the age of 5 to 6 years old, 11, 12, and then 15, and it continues to go through the 20s. With this particular part of the brain, which we call is the executive center of the brain, this is where creativity, compassion, empathy, logic, regulation, self-awareness, sequence of thoughts, planning, problem solving, and attention in the executive center of the brain. Children that have ADHD struggle with the executive center of the brain. Why? After I just described to you what happens in the executive center of the brain, why do you think their executive center, they struggle, something going on up in the front part, the higher brain? Why?
The attention part.
The attention part. Right. So there is something going on in the executive center, which is the frontal of the brain, which is the attention part. A lot of kids with ADHD, a lot of kids who have struggled with self-regulating. That's up here in the executive part of the brain. What about the middle part of the brain? This is the emotional centered brain. This is developmentally focused at ages birth to 4. Processes memory, emotion, responses to stress, nurturing, this out the way, nurturing, caring, separation and anxiety, fear, rage, social bonding, and hormones control. Okay, this is the emotional part, which is the middle part of the brain. All of this is going on there. And this is developed between birth to 4 years old. Processing memory, emotions, responses to stress, nurturing, caring, separation, anxiety, fear, rage, social bonding, and hormone control. Let's look at the lower part of the brain. This is the survival center of the brain, and it's developed at birth, okay? It regulates automatic functions, breathing, digestion, heart rate, sleep, hunger, instinctive behaviors, right? Functions that sustain life. Now,
That's that amygdala.
That's the amygdala, yes. So what happens, which is right here, it's at the lower part of the brain, but if it's right here in the back where the neck is at. Now, when someone experiences trauma, the lower part of the brain begins to act. It goes into survival mode. And when it hits that survival mode, it cannot get to the upper part of the brain, which is the higher brain. It can't hit the executive center, and it can't hit the emotional center. So when you see a child in crisis, 9 times out of 10, they're in survival mode. And when you hit the survival mode, the trauma responses are what? We hear it a lot. Fight response, freeze response, and flight response. The fight, the person struggles to maintain power and labeled as non-compliant or aggressive. Isn't that what we see when a kid get ready to fight you? They are fighting when they're in crisis. They're going to fight you. I think, what was his name? The man that said, he said, oh, it's about to be a fight. It's about to be some violence. So a lot of times this particular kid is, is looked at and labeled as non-compliant or aggressive. When in actuality, they're in survival mode. They immediately lock into survival mode. Then we look at the freeze response. This is where this person feels powerless and can't or won't speak up. They label as unmotivated, and they will shut down and put their head down. Wear the hoodie. The kid that's shutting down. Once again, they're in the survival part. They have shut down. Then we're going to look at the flight response person. They want to escape. They're labeled as disruptive and avoidant. And they will walk out of class and hide under their desk or run. They're out of here. How many people know people when crisis come in their lives? The moment you come at them wrong, they're ready to fight you. Or what about the moment that something goes wrong, they just freeze. They just hide their head. They avoid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or the moment that something goes on, they out of here. That person can't even, come on and sit down and talk. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's going on. No, that person's gone. They can't even do it. Well, here is a reason, scientific reason to all of that. These individuals are in survival mode. And when the brain is in survival mode, they cannot get to the executive center, and they cannot get to the emotional center, which we call the upper part of the brain. Therefore, what ends up happening is they're either shutting down, they're either running away, or they're ready to beat you up. Because they cannot get to self-awareness. They cannot get to planning, problem solving, attention, creativity, self-regulation, compassion. When a kid is acting up and he hurts another kid, you're like, hey, does he have compassion? Why is he not having compassion? He's still ready to fight with this kid. Why he done hurt the kid and he's showing no compassion. Why is he not building emotional bonds? And all you see is he's avoiding everyone. Why is she not doing this? And all you see is her running away from confrontation. All of this is due to the brain, how it's affected by trauma. So I have a question. Can we, or can people who experience the fight, freeze, and flight get to the upper brain?
Yes, with therapeutic rapport, you can help them get to that center. I'll give an example. Yesterday, WP Young Pete did a great job with Anthony. Mm-hmm. When he saw one of the clients come in with the treat, so-called, or ice cream, mm-hmm. He immediately just flipped. But Pete actually kind of coached him into relaxing it, not making it a big deal. He's like, the ice cream isn't a treat. Mm-hmm. But what he tried to do is deal with him and his emotions and not put it on the guy why the guy was upset, but put it back on him. What if you were upset? Basically, he made the both scenarios seem similar. Mm-hmm. And he made the one guy with the trigger look at himself and not judge the other one, because if he judged the other one, he's judging himself. Mm-hmm. So he's great rapport and made him get into the executive mind thinking. Even though he was in a crisis mode, he kept bringing it back to him. So I love that intervention that he did. He just kept me very calm, and he made it look like, hey, your issues are the same as the other issues.
Mhm.
So that was great rapport. We kept him in that executive thinking state versus crisis, and made the treat seem like, or the ice cream wasn't really a treat. It was basically, it wasn't a treat. It was just, it was what it was.
Yeah,
So great job. I want to applaud him for that.
good. But so what the key word that you said though was he had a what with him though?
He had a what?
The key word you said, what did he have with that particular resident? He had a what with him?
Rapport.
A
He had a great
rapport.
rapport, and he kept giving him rewards, ups and downs, but he kept basically making him seem like your issues are not, we all are the same, basically. So don't get upset when someone basically has a treat. It's not a treat.
Yeah.
And he really, I just commend him on that. He kept him thinking in executive state versus in a crisis mode.
Good. And that's trauma-informed care. That is an example of trauma-informed care. He utilized his rapport building because, if he didn't have the rapport, could he even get to that kid and have that conversation?
No. And this guy
Yeah.
goes very quick. I mean, goes to 0 to 10 and stays in 10.
Absolutely.
So he kept him in the 3 to 4 stage and reduced it all the way down to 1. So I was like, awesome.
And that was that report.
And let's-
Remember last week we discussed 75% of positive patient outcome is what? Therapeutic rapport. Right? So good. Just his rapport alone, and then him being able to get to him while conversating with him about, hey, you're in kind of same situation, kind of get him to relate to the other kid, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
3 days.
And Miss Ivy, if you can go ahead and look at the chat, look in the chat, and just whoever's on mute, just hit. You can, whoever's unmuted, you can mute that.
Okay.
Monique, you hate her too? Yes.
Y'all don't like.
I hate all of them.
I need to go to participants. Let me
If
do that.
anybody has their speaker on, please put it on mute. Everybody. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Okay. So good. He was using trauma-informed care. That's exactly what he was doing. So we talked about the fight, flight, freeze. We're going to skip this part here. We're not going to talk about this. Is if I was in person with you all doing that type of activity. So let's go with the upstairs and downstairs brain. So we were talking about, hey, the executive functioning, right? And the emotional center and the survival center, which is the amygdala right down here, security guard of the brain. And then the upstairs of the brain, which is the fear, stress, anger, problem solving, planning, thinking, and prefrontal cortex, right? Which is, part of the executive functioning of the brain. Now, the fight, flight, brains. You're trying to reason with that individual, it's hard to reason with them because they can't hit here. If Johnny's angry, he's mad, and he done put himself where the big has shut down, he's either in flight or fight or freeze. You cannot get him up there unless we do what you call grounding techniques. If anyone you have pieces of paper, I would write this down. It's very, 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 very important. Grounding techniques are techniques that we utilize, therapeutic techniques that we utilize to get the person to get to the upper part of the brain so that they can plan, so that they can problem solve, so they can think, so that they can express anger appropriately, understand and manage their own stress and fears. It's called grounding techniques. Who knows what grounding techniques are? Anyone?
Breathing, taking a step back, feeling your feet on the ground, and being present in a moment.
Yeah. Good job. You on it, AR. What you say you do, AR? He is on it.
Thank
What
you.
do,
I do it.
what do you
do a
say? Because
lot.
I remember you was telling us at the beginning. What do you do? What type of work?
I got a degree in political science and a minor in psychology and Black studies. So
Oh, there you
this is
go.
all I've been training
Yep,
for.
there
But
you
I've been
go.
in
'Cause
this
you got
field
it.
for over 3-4 years. So yeah, I'm
Yes.
pretty
Yes.
professional. I appreciate that.
Yes, you got it. Because you know what, let me tell you something. And I'm gonna be totally transparent with you all. In my career, when I was taught, teach the kids how to breathe, get a little squeezy ball, stress ball, so they could release stress. Back in the day, I didn't believe in that. I used to be like, man, that's a bunch of baloney. I used to just be like, man, this is all that psychological stuff, and that, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it until trauma came to me. And that trauma is in the form of losing my mother 12 years ago. She had been diagnosed with cancer and she died. They said she had 6 months to live, but she died 5 months. And I was extremely angry because I didn't get that other mom. I was really mad. I said, they said 6 months. I was stuck on 6 months. I knew I was going to have 6 months with my mother, but she died at 5 months. And I was a young therapist at that time. I mean, very beginning stage of doing therapy. And I was full of rage. I was full of anger. I was mad. I was so mad that I remember the time when my mother died, my family, we moved to a beautiful home that was renovated and the windows were all brand new. I mean, these were some beautiful windows. And I remember sitting on a couch one day with my ex-husband. And at the time I just had 2 kids and we were all happy watching TV. And I do the air quotes because everybody else was happy. And they thought I was because I was smiling and I was watching the movie with them. But what they didn't know was it was an inside rage because I was angry. I was angry because I didn't have my mother anymore. And so I never forget, I looked in the